Orphan of Green Gables by L. M. Montgomery. Read by Kate Harper. Mrs. Rachel Lynde lived just where the Avonlea main road dipped down into a little hollow, fringed with alders and ladies' teardrops, and traversed by a brook that had its source away back in the woods of the old Cuthbert place. It was reputed to be an intricate, headlong brook in its earlier course, but by the time it reached Lynde's Hollow, it was a quiet, well-conducted little stream, for not even a brook could run past Mrs. Rachel Lynde's door without due regard for decency and decorum. Mrs. Rachel Lynde was a notable housewife. She ran the sewing circle, helped run the Sunday school, and was the strongest prop of the Church Aid Society and Foreign Missions Auxiliary. Yet with all this, Mrs. Rachel found abundant time to sit for hours at her kitchen window. And since Avonlea occupied a little triangular peninsula jutting out into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, anybody who went out of it, or into it, had to pass over that hill road. Mrs. Rachel was sitting there one afternoon in early June. Thomas Lynde, a meek little man whom Avonlea people called Rachel Lynde's husband, was sowing his late turnip seed. And Matthew Cuthbert ought to have been sowing his on the big Red Brook field over by Green Gables. And yet, here was Matthew Cuthbert, at 3:30 on the afternoon of a busy day, driving up the hill. Moreover, he wore his best suit of clothes. Now, where was Matthew Cuthbert going? And why was he going there? It must be something pressing and unusual which was taking him. He was the shyest man alive, and hated to have to go among strangers or to any place where he might have to talk. "I'll just step over to Green Gables and find out from Marilla where he's gone, and why," Mrs. Rachel finally concluded. "I won't know a minute's peace of mind until I know what has taken Matthew Cuthbert out of Avonlea today." Accordingly, Mrs. Rachel set out. She had not far to go. The orchard-embowered house where the Cuthberts lived was a scant quarter of a mile up the road from Lynde's Hollow, but Green Gables was barely visible from the main road along which all the other Avonlea houses were so sociably situated. Mrs. Rachel stepped out of the lane into the backyard of Green Gables. Mrs. Rachel was of the opinion that Marilla swept that yard as often as she swept her house. One could have eaten a meal off the ground. Mrs. Rachel rapped smartly at the kitchen door and stepped in when bidden to do so. The kitchen at Green Gables was a cheerful apartment, or would have been if it had not been so painfully clean as to give it the appearance of an unused parlor. Here sat Marilla Cuthbert, knitting, the table behind her laid for supper. There were 3 plates laid, so that Marilla must be expecting someone home with Matthew to tea, but the dishes were everyday dishes, so that the expected company could not be any particular company. "Good evening, Rachel," Marilla said briskly. Something that might be called friendship existed between Marilla Cuthbert and Mrs. Rachel, in spite of, or perhaps because of, their dissimilarity. Marilla was a tall, thin woman. Her dark hair showed some gray streaks and was always twisted up in a hard little knot behind. She looked like a woman of narrow experience and rigid conscience, which she was, but there was a saving something about her mouth, which might have been considered indicative of a sense of humor. "We're all pretty well."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?